Okay, so the last unit we are going to do, or the last lesson that we're going to do in this unit, is equations of a circle. This stuff is really easy. This is one of my favorite things. So I'm going to just show you how to write an equation of a circle. So the standard form looks something like this, which seems really scary and long, but it's really not too bad after you break it down. Okay, so it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So what h, k actually is, it's actually a point. It is the center of your circle. And r is actually the radius. Okay. So when you're given the center and the radius or the diameter, we can put it into this form very easily. And I'm going to show you how. So if you look at number 1, it gives you the center, 5, 3. 5 is your h, 3 is your k, and then your radius is your r. And you're just going to plug these numbers into this equation. So you're going to have parenthesis x minus h is 5, close parentheses squared, plus y minus k is 3, close parentheses squared, and that's going to equal r squared. We want to actually square that. So what is 2 squared? Should say 4. Okay? So number 2, we have h, we have k, and we have our r. We're going to plug it in. X minus a negative 1. What happens when two negatives stand right next to each other? They should become a positive, and then you're going to square that. Plus y minus 7 squared. And that's going to equal the radius squared. 14 squared is 196. Okay. Number 3, we have h, we have k, we have r. Actually, we have the diameter. So what is r if the diameter is 18? Should be 9. So let's plug in. X minus a negative 2 should turn to a positive, plus y minus a negative 11 squared should turn to a positive. And then we're going to square that radius, not the diameter. We've got to square the radius. So 9 squared is 81. Okay, number 4, we have h, we have k. R would have to be 16 since the diameter is 32. So x minus 0, you can write it, but it's not necessary. If the 0 is there, you can just write x squared plus y minus 9 squared equals 256 after you square 16. Okay, number 5, h, k, this is my radius. So I'm going to have x minus a negative 4 squared, that turns to a positive, plus that 0 is there with the y, so I can just put y squared. And that is going to equal the square root of 47 squared. So if you plug that into your calculator, let's just see what happens. The square root of 47, and then we square it. It just turns out to be 47, that number underneath the square root. So just don't write down the square root. When you square a square root, it cancels, and that's what we have here. Okay, so number 6, we have h, we have k, we have r. So I'd have x minus 15 squared plus y minus a negative 6 squared turns to a positive equals, if I square that square root, it will go away, so all I have is 158. Okay, so make sure you have that written. Okay, the next one, we are given the graph, but we still need the center and we still need the radius. Those are the two things that we still need. So we can find out what the coordinate for the center is. Let's count. We're going over 1, 2, 3, and we're going down 2. If I count from the center to the edge, that'll give me the radius. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's H, K, and R. So let's plug it into our formula. We're going to have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals 25. I didn't plug it in.
They are full of wires, there's electricity, so you will not be in that area without a hard hat or
Ignore that.
a construction worker or a principal. Please stay out of those areas at this time from this time forward. Thank you.
Sorry. There you go. So we have x minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 25. Okay. So now let's see how we do it when we have the center and the point on the circle somewhere. So I just want to draw a little picture. So here's my circle, as bad as it may be, but it's telling me here's a center and here's a point somewhere on the circle. So I know that this is my h and my k, but what I don't have is my radius. But I know if I find this segment right here from the center to the point on the circle, that will give me my radius. So I need this distance, okay? Distance is what I need to find. So I'm going to end up having to use distance formula. I want you to remember distance formula. Distance equals the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay? Alright, so we're going to plug it in. We're going to use these 2 points as our x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay? So we're going to take our distance formula. It will actually give us our radius. Okay? So we're going to take 7 minus 9 squared plus 4 minus 10 squared. So I've taught you how to do this. Remember, do not plug in your square root into your calculator. All I want you to do is 7 minus 9 squared plus 4 minus 10 squared. So that will give me the square root of 40. This is my radius. Okay? So now I have enough information. I have HK and I have my radius. So now I can write my equation. X minus 9 squared plus y minus 10 squared equals, if I square the square root of 40, it just becomes 40. Alright, so we're going to do the same on number 9. I have h, I have k. I could go ahead and start my equation with that h and that k. I'm going to have x minus h squared plus y minus that negative 5 squared, which turns to a positive. But I just don't know what it equals yet because I still have to find my radius by using distance formula. So my distance formula, I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. So I'm going to have negative 7 minus 1 squared plus negative 13 minus a negative 5 squared, which turns to a positive. So I'm going to plug that in. So I should get 128 underneath that square root. That's my radius. So So if I square that radius, if I square a square root, I just have the number underneath. And that is my answer. Okay. So flip it over. I'm going to skip down to number 12. So when we're given circumference or area, we can still find the equation of our circle. So this is still our center. This is my H and this is my K. So I can go ahead and start to set up my equation. I'd have x minus a negative 1 squared. That'll turn to a positive, plus y minus 4 squared. I just don't know what it equals yet because I don't know my radius. So I want you to remember that circumference is 2 pi r and area is pi r squared. Okay? So this is the circumference it's giving me. I know that my circumference is 6 pi. So I'm going to set that equal to the circumference formula, 2 pi r. And I'm going to solve for r. So I know my pi's cancel. So if I divide by 2, what is 6 divided by 2? Should be 3. So if I square my radius to plug it into my formula, I should get 9. And that is my answer. Okay. So number 13, here's my H, here's my K. Let's go ahead and start my setup.
Can I have all the paraprofessionals and instructional assistants in Ms. Rodriguez's office at this time? Thank you.
So I'm going to have x minus 9 squared plus y minus 12 squared. I just don't know what it equals yet. So I'm going to take that circumference formula and I'm going to set it equal to 2 pi r. So if I divide by 2 pi, the pi's cancel. And I just need to take 17 divided by 2. And I end up my radius being 8.5. But I got to square it for my equation. So 8.5 squared is going to be 72.25. That's my equation. Okay. Next one. I could start my equation with my center. X minus a negative 8 will be a positive, plus y minus a negative 11 will be a positive. Make sure you're squaring these. Now my area formula is pi r squared. So if the pi's cancel, all I'm left with is 16 equals r squared. And my equation, it equals r squared. So 16 is the number that I want to write right there. I don't have to square anything, don't have to take the square root, because it's in the form that I already needed in for my equation. So those are easy. So number 15, start our formula with our center. X minus 2 squared plus y plus 2 squared. If I set this equal to pi r squared, the pi's cancel, and I'm left with what I need. 361 is my r squared. So that's what this equation equals. That's my answer. Okay, a couple more. Okay, given the equation of the circle, identify the center and radius or diameter, depending on what it asks for. So to go backwards, remember that we're changing the sign of these. So if it's a negative 5 here, it's going to be a positive 5 for the center. So I'm going to change the sign. I'm going to work backwards. Negative 5 turns to a positive 5. Negative 1 turns to a positive 1. This is H and this is K. Now remember, this is r squared, so I have to take the square root. The square root of 64 is 8. Okay. Alright. So number 17, I have to work backwards. If it was a positive 7, now it's a negative 7. A negative 2 turns to a positive 2. And now to get the diameter, first of all, to get the radius, I have to take the square root of 324, which will give me 18. But this is my radius. So to get the diameter, I just have to multiply it by 2, which will give me 36. Make sure you pay attention to what it asks for. Okay, x is all by itself, so that means a 0 was with it. So 0 is my h. My k is going to be negative 10. Again, it asks for diameter, so you're going to take the square root of that 42.25, and then you're going to multiply it by 2. You're going to get 13. So number 19, you should have a positive 6 and negative 11. The radius will be the square root of 58. But it's a decimal number, so let's just leave it as the square root of 58, since it is a decimal, and not have to worry about it that way. Okay, one last problem that I want to work with you is the challenge problem. So in this challenge problem, it tells us to write the equation of a circle with a diameter in points of negative 14, 1 and negative 10, 9. So I'm going to just draw a circle. I'm going to draw it right here. That way I don't take up too much of my space here. Now it's telling me that I have endpoints here. I have endpoints somewhere along the circle. Okay? So the two things that I need is my center and my radius. So let's talk about how to get that. Okay? To get my center, I need the point that's directly in between those 2 points. That is called the midpoint. And to get my radius, I need from the center to one of those endpoints, I need the distance. So I need to use the distance. So I've got to find the center first by using midpoint formula. So I want you to remember midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. We wrote distance formula on the first page, so I'm not going to write that again. But we're going to find the center real quick. So if I take those x's and I add those together, I have negative 14 plus a negative 10 divided by 2. And then if I take those y's and add them together, 1 plus 9 divided by 2. I'm going to simplify that. Okay? Negative 14 plus a negative 10 is negative 24. And if I divide that by 2, I get negative 12. And then 1 plus 9 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. So this is my center. So I can start my equation at least. I can have x plus 12 squared plus y minus 5 squared. I just don't know what it equals yet. So now with this point, and I'm just going to pick the first point, we're going to use distance formula now. So now my distance formula, I'm going to label this x1 and y1, and this x2 and y2. So I'm going to take negative 14 minus a negative 12, which will turn to a positive, squared, plus 1 minus 5 squared. So plug that in. And you get 20. So remember that this is your radius. And you have to square it. So when you square the square root goes away. So you just have that equal to 20. Let me double check. Yep, that's right. Okay, so any problems that we didn't finish on this notes page, I want you to go ahead and finish up, and then I want you to start working on homework 8. The next page that you've been given, is this arc and angle measures in circles page. This is just a reference page. I suggest you study it. You do have a test this week. I am going to go ahead and let you use this on your test. So make sure that you hold on to it, because there's not going to be any extra copies given out. You can use this on your test, okay? Alright, go ahead and get to work.